a rough month, a lot of deputies getting into trouble, arrests. You've had to fire quite a few. What's going through your mind right now?
Well, it's frustrating to say the least. We've had at least 4 deputies in the last month or so that we've had to terminate and file criminal charges against them, and it's been heart-wrenching at the sheriff's office because we have so many good people that are doing the right thing, and they don't get any publicity, but they're working hard, and they would never think of doing these things, and that's what I really feel for. It frustrates me in that regard.
What are we missing here to have this? Is this just a streak of bad luck, or is there something that can be done?
Well, we've asked that question. My command staff and I have asked that question 100 times if we've asked it once, and we've come to the conclusion that the people we were dealing with some of them have been here a couple decades or more. Some of them have been here a year or two. We've looked at our hiring practices, and we do everything from a psychological to truth verification via computer voice stress analyzer to even looking at their credit, and we haven't found anything that we could have predicted this at all. So I guess to answer your question simply, it seems to be just an anomaly here because again, none of the incidents we've talked about have been related to each other. It's not one conspiracy amongst some bad employees. So.
Hiring process, really nothing that can be changed?
Well, I'm not going to say that. We're always looking for a way to maybe tweak it, but there is nothing that anybody has brought forward as a suggestion that we don't already do. We do a thorough interview with the people, and we go back as far as we possibly can, looking at their job history, criminal history, everything about them. So, there's an argument to be made that these people, when they got hired, they might not have been inclined to do these things, and maybe this is something that developed over 20 years. So, we're looking at our in-service and ongoing training as well.
Anybody out there, taxpayers, might be saying, oh my God, what's going on over at the sheriff's office, losing a little confidence, a little worried. What would you say to the public?
Well, I will tell you that as frustrating as it is for me as sheriff and my command staff, we're not going to shy away from difficult decisions. Even if they follow 3 or 4 difficult decisions in the recent past, we're going to do what it takes to address these issues. We're going to address them head on. As painful as they are, we're not going to hide anything about it. And we're going to make sure that justice, if a crime is committed, we're going to make sure justice is served, whether it's the citizen on the street or it's one of my deputies. We're going to do what it takes. And I am very, very hopeful that this is the last issue, the last major issue we're going to have to deal with for some time to come. But we do hire people here, and our people make mistakes, and some of them may get through that have character flaws.
Yeah.
Sheriff, there's some other agencies in the area, take a rest there for a minute, who, when they've had some issues, they put people on a paid leave for a long time until the investigation is thoroughly, a long period of time. But it seems you're getting a look at the evidence and kind of ruling with an iron fist on things.
Well, I will tell you that oftentimes when people are put on administrative leave with pay, it's not a case of the administrator dragging their feet. It's because the evidence always isn't quite as clear as we'd hope. And I guess in that regard, I've been pretty fortunate over the last month or so that the evidence has been very clear cut, and the decision to terminate their employment has been very easy. This last case in particular, the deputy told a version of the story that was found to be totally untruthful. So there was no question that there was an integrity issue there. The deputy had every opportunity to explain what happened and try to mitigate what physical evidence might be there, and he chose not to do that. That coupled with a a complainant who had a complaint that seemed to be very credible and again was supported by some evidence. Those two things made the decision in this case very easy. I will tell you that we were very fortunate that the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, although they weren't involved in any investigative way in the case, we did submit the evidence to their lab and we gave them an explanation of what we needed and why. And they literally worked through the weekend to get the evidence tested and get its results back late yesterday. And of course, once we got those results and determined that the deputy was being untruthful and the citizen complainant was accurate in what she was telling us, at least in regard to the evidence, it made the decision easy, and we wanted to take care of business, frankly.
How does that make you feel, the guy in charge, where you have someone lying, trying to cover it up, and then how do you feel about that?
Well, the emotions, to say the least, are large. Angry. Sometimes I could, bite a nail in two. Sometimes I'm so angry. Disappointed because these individuals took an oath. I'm also disappointed for my people that, like I said, they're out there doing a hard job, and they know that this is a reflection on them. And no matter how good a job they do, no matter how hard they work, the fact that they'll jump in front of bullets for an innocent citizen, a lot of that gets wiped away by one or two people that are doing the wrong thing. And that's very frustrating for me because I know, the vast majority of the people we have working here are great people, and I see them as recently as a few minutes ago in the courthouse, and they are as frustrated as I am. And as their sheriff, that bothers me because it's very little I can do about it, except, as you said, when an issue comes up, take care of business immediately.
When, in your opinion, are these employees who are just maybe think they're above the law? Are they just stupid, or are they saying, you know what, I'm going to do it and I hope I get away with it?
I think there are psychiatrists that are a lot smarter than me that have tried to figure that out and they haven't been able to. I think it's probably a combination of all of that. I don't think anybody ever does anything wrong thinking about the consequences. They assume that they're going to get away with it and they do it anyway. Unfortunately, these are individuals who see every day the results of poor decisions, and you'd think that they would be able to put that into play in their own life and realize some of the stupid things they're doing. It baffles me, frankly.
The deputy giving the person a ride home, is that a common practice?
It's not uncommon because, again, leaving a citizen on the side of the road stranded is not something that I as sheriff want to do. And we have procedures in place, and this is obviously indicative of that, to protect that citizen and frankly to protect the deputy, because it's very easy in that situation for the deputy to be accused of something that deputy didn't do. It goes both ways, and in this particular case, between radio traffic and computer traffic, as well as the automatic vehicle locator, we were able to verify that what the citizen said had some merit, just those alone. Now, it didn't necessarily mean the deputy was guilty of doing anything wrong, but it's very, very difficult for a deputy to do something inappropriate in those situations when they're trying to help a citizen. And it's also difficult for a citizen to falsely accuse the deputy without us getting to the bottom of it. As I said, sometimes we're not able to tell one way or another, but in this particular case, there was some independent data that helped support her story.
And can you offer a little bit more about the details? There are a few details in it, and it raises a lot more questions about what happened. Can you provide even a little bit more insight into to what the nature of the allegations are and what happened?
And again, it's a very, very, very recent event. Literally, it was the morning of the 23rd of January, so it was only a couple days ago that this occurred. And the detectives are still doing their investigation, and they're working, as I said, very closely in the press release with the state's attorney's office to make sure that the charges are the best charges based on what evidence we have so far. But without going into a lot of detail, the allegation was such that the deputy did not drop the citizen off immediately at her house and drove some short distance, and then at that point convinced the citizen, who obviously was, with the deputy, to conduct an inappropriate act. And
is that a sexual act?
yes.
Okay. Why if she's being, I've forgotten the exact charge, if she's being kept someplace against her will and asked to engage in a sexual act, why is this just a battery charge? Why isn't it sexual battery?
Because the statute doesn't fit, with the evidence that we have, the statute doesn't fit for a sexual battery.
Okay.
At least the preliminary investigation indicates that. Now, the state's attorney is reviewing it. They obviously have the option and the alternative to review the charges, any evidence that may come up that may mitigate or aggravate the circumstances, and they may elect to amend the charges, either more seriously or less seriously, in any case, not just this one.
Okay.
But the information we had, and we did work with the state's attorney's office on the particular charge, making sure that they were comfortable with it. Again, the false imprisonment, it's pretty obvious if you take somebody in the back of a patrol car past their house. I think that's a good case. And then as far as the actual act itself, if you read the statute, there's some concerns there with a typical sexual battery charge. This doesn't fit.
Is there a time period from when they left the accident scene to when she actually got home that you're releasing?
It was only literally a few minutes longer than it normally would have been. Maybe 5 or 10 minutes if memory serves me. Because it was very close to her house what happened, and she wasn't with the deputy a long period of time from the time they passed her house the first time to the time she got home. At least that's what I'm being told by what the complaint is saying.
Moving forward, I know we kind of asked that earlier. What are you going to do to get the public to once we trust and get the good name of the Hernando Sheriff's Office back?
Well, I think that recent events show that as sheriff, I don't shy away from taking care of problems in the organization, as painful as they are. So I think that the public can rest assured that if I get a complaint that has some merit, we're going to take it very seriously. Unless we can show that it's unfounded from the get-go, we're going to take that complaint very seriously. We're going to investigate it through to its logical conclusion. And if one of my people, a deputy or civilian for that matter, has done something wrong, we're going to take the appropriate action. I think my actions speak louder than words in that regard. As far as moving forward, we're going to look at training. We're going to look at maybe even getting the employees to recommit to their oath or something similar, any other actions we can come up with as a command staff to help prevent this. But as I said, we have people here, and people are going to do some things that will make you shake your head. And it's unfortunate that we've had several of them in the last month. But as I said, the public, there's nothing more I can do than let my actions speak for themselves.
What have you communicated to the agency, the employees at the agency, in terms of trying to gauge the morale, and if it's low, try to bump it back up again?
Well, we were talking about that recently, about some meetings with the sheriff, whether they're large meetings or small meetings, and talk to them. I think they understand how I feel. They know that I trust them to do their job, and they know that I know that they're doing a good job, the vast majority of them. I was, I don't know if I said this, but I was just recently at the courthouse, and and I was talking to several of my bailiffs, including a couple supervisors, and they are as mortified and frustrated as I am about this whole thing. So I know that the employees understand, and they're going to rise above this. We have good people here. I've said it from day one, and I'm going to continue to say it. You know, even a small handful of people doing bad things should not be taken to reflect the whole agency. And that's another reason why I worked so quickly to act on this, is because the sooner that we can distance ourselves from individuals and actions that are going to bring discredit to the agency, I think the better it is for the agency in the long run.
Do you, you were talking earlier about that you've shown no hesitation in rooting out the problems when they come up. I think at the earlier press conference on these issues with the vice, you said that I'm not sure what the situation was with Captain Garcia, whether there was going to be I think the criminal investigation you said was continuing and a decision would be made whether there would be any charges. Has that decision been made?
No, it has not. It's not a criminal investigation at this point. It is an internal affairs investigation, and that has been moving forward despite some of these other cases that are occurring.
Okay.
And it's my understanding that it's very close to.
So there is no there's no chance of criminal charges against.
I wouldn't say there's no chance, but right now I don't see that as any possibility.
Some of the lawyers I've talked to said, well, you know, they understand the situation. Obviously, he was trying to help somebody out, but isn't that being an accessory after the fact? Isn't it helping someone cover up criminal activity, and isn't that necessarily a crime itself?
You could possibly make that argument, but I think I have not talked personally. I know my detectives and my supervisors have been talking with the state's attorney's office, and they have come to the conclusion that it is not something that they want to prosecute. And maybe, and this is conjecture on my part, maybe the argument is that he tried to help undo a crime, and that may be difficult to prove that he was really an accessory in trying to fix a problem. Now, albeit it was not the appropriate action to take, but I don't know if it would rise to the level of being a prosecutable criminal offense.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm correct, there's the deputy today, or yesterday, the one last week, and then 2 from the incident he's speaking of, and then the 1 still being investigated, probably not going to be criminally.
Correct.
And a DUI charge as well, Tybor?
Yeah, that one is still in the investigative phase. I think that's still in the criminal phase. That one, the evidence, you know, is still being reviewed, I think, by the state's attorney's office. It's actually obviously a highway patrol case, and highway patrol and the state's attorney are I'm sure conferring on it. I pretty much stayed out of the criminal case.
Did you cut him loose?
No.
Not yet, okay.
No.
But he was arrested for DUI?
He was arrested for DUI, yes.
Okay.
And he's on paid leave, pending.
He is on paid leave, I believe, pending the criminal charges.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure we did not move that to unpaid leave.
What was his full name?
Joe Tybor.
Joe Tybor.
So Martinez,
A week or 2.
we got the hair dryer.
Yeah, Moroni, I believe it is. And then you have
Reed
Reed.
and Glatfelter.
Glatfelter, yes, sir.
Okay.
I have one other question. Several months ago, when we had a conversation about press coverage, and I was making the argument that we think that you should release more information in a more timely manner, you said, trust us. You know, we want our guys to have a sterile environment to work in. You
Right.
should trust us. Do you think that this has eroded any of that trust that you asked for in that case?
Well, I think that this particular case shows just the opposite, as a matter
Mhm.
of fact. I mean, an event happens on the early morning of the 23rd, and you know, within several days, we have had evidence tested, we have done a thorough interview, we've come to the conclusion that the person needed to be criminally charged, working with the state's attorney's office, and have terminated that individual from employment. You know, and again, all the information eventually, and I'm talking usually days or months, not years, eventually the vast majority of it's going to be open for public review. And so we can be examined and criticized or applauded for what we did based on a review after the fact. The issue comes in is in the middle of this, sometimes releasing information can slow this down, and we can't work as quickly to get to the truth because of, you know, misinformation that gets out there by you know, people who either are witnesses or claim to be witnesses. And so we try to work in a sterile environment, and if we are in a sterile environment, we can usually work pretty quickly. Not always, but usually. This is a little bit of an anomaly because the evidence came back so quickly. They don't always come back as quickly on this, but we talked about FDLE, about, you know, being a public interest issue and a public safety issue and a law enforcement officer, so they picked up the ball and ran with it. But again, no, I think it's just the opposite. If you look at it analytically, we're doing we are doing the right thing, and I'm going to stand by what we do is defendable. People may not always agree with my decision, but I'm going to stand by it.
How long would, if this was just Joe Q Public, or Joe Smith, this case, how long would it have taken for those results to come back?
I guess it depends on the crime. You know, if it was a, you know, maybe a murder or something similar, we might have had results almost as quickly. You
But
know,
in these
if
same
it
circumstances, but not a deputy.
What's that?
If it was these same circumstances, but not a deputy.
If it was the, well, you wouldn't have the exact same. You wouldn't probably wouldn't have a police car with a you know, a cage in the back. You know, I would say that probably we were expecting this to take probably a week or 2 weeks maybe. You know, if it was a burglary, let's say, and there was some DNA left, you know, it might take a week or two. So this was a little bit unusual, but again, it's a very serious issue. Somebody who has the public trust, and we had a, you know, obviously had the deputy identified, so it was very easy to compare. Didn't have to go through any database or anything.
Do you know if Deputy Martinez has indicated any desire or inclination to fight his termination, or did he sign the memo and say,
he was given the termination paperwork as well as his rights as an employee, and I have not heard back whether he intends on fighting it or not. But we're obviously prepared to move forward, or we wouldn't have done it.
Wouldn't it be conceivable if somebody, if a citizen had kept somebody against their will in a car and requested a sexual act be performed, that you would make an arrest based on the statement of the victim? I mean, I certainly have seen that in the past.
You know, again, when we arrest a law enforcement officer, as I said, I think law enforcement officers are more often the victim of false allegations than the average citizen. You know, a hardworking deputy can get a lot of complaints, and as I said, a lot of them we can prove are unfounded. It's just somebody who's upset that they or a loved one was arrested. So when we make a case against a deputy, before I arrest them, I want to make sure that we have the state's attorney understanding the case and at least not disagreeing with us, even if they don't put it in writing, they're going to prosecute it, because that'd be probably too much to ask, but make sure they don't have any major concerns with the case. Oftentimes, as in this case, we obtained a warrant for his arrest, or a capias. Again, another set of eyes to look at it, so I can't be accused of going on a witch hunt against somebody internally, and and making sure that we have a good case before we make the arrest. Because if it does fall apart, if a case against the average citizen falls apart, it's different than if a deputy's falls apart, because now I have to rehire that person, and it makes it that much more difficult in the future. So, do we go an extra mile before we arrest them? Absolutely, and there's good reason to.
This might be in the report, and I apologize if I didn't get thoroughly read while I was driving 70 miles an hour down the road.
Don't tell
so-
them.
No, I did not.
You're
I
on
did
the
not.
Suncoast, okay.
Did this deputy in this last incident, did he admit to anything, or is he still denying?
The only official statement from the deputy was a denial. I can't say what he said outside the official circles to anybody. It would be hearsay at best. So, and I really don't have any information that says he's admitted it to anybody, but his official interview was that he denied.
And when he presented the evidence, did he just be
Well,
quiet there?
that was before we had the test results. Now, we did it, but he was aware that we did have evidence that was going to be tested, but he still denied it.
And this inappropriate sexual act, it wasn't forced, it was consensual.
I would say that is, it wasn't forced in the manner that a lot of people would consider forced. It wasn't physical. There was some physical. Again, I can't go into the details, because I think I'd have to probably go into more details than I'd be willing. But it wasn't.
It wouldn't be fair to say that the deputy forced the passenger in the car.
I guess that depends on your definition of forced.
Okay.
If you or a loved one were in that same situation and it occurred, would you consider it being forced?
Well, there's physical force and there's psychological force.
Yeah, and physical forces, we could argue at what point does. That's probably beyond what I want to get into today.
Okay.
Intimidation?
Yeah, that's probably not entirely accurate. It's hard for me to say exactly what was in the mind of the citizen, but suffice it to say, she was obviously in a position of vulnerability, and the deputy took advantage of that. And there's no doubt about that. And of course, there's the battery charge, which that shows that there was an unlawful touching. So.
It's safe to say he was using his badge as a shield.
Well, he was definitely using the circumstances, and he was in the circumstances because of his badge. So I would say that's a fair assessment.
And patrol cars don't open from the back, right?
Yeah, she could not get out if she.
Any idea time-wise when we might get more details?
Again, it's still happening fairly quickly. We made a decision, and I wanted to get the information out on the decision. I assume that once the state's attorney makes a final decision on exactly what charges, if any, they're going to move forward with, then I think there'll probably be more information. But most of the 99% of what occurred is out there. It's just a little ambiguous, I guess. So. Again, you have to remember this whole event only took, even by the complainant's statement, that it wasn't a long drawn out thing. So.
Did she live in Spring Hill?
Yeah, I believe so. She lives in Hernando County. I'm not exactly sure off the top of my head where.
Okay.
Okay.
1 second.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.